Hello. In this video, I'm going to be talking about setting up a Pro Tools session template for use in a typical audio post-production session, particularly promo in this case. Usually I view the session and the way I approach making a template as the way I approach the mix, which is voiceover, then dialogue, then music, then sound effects. So this video is going to be just the first part of that, and that's going to be voiceover. So to create the voiceover portion of this session template, I'm going to need a few things. I'm going to need 2 auxes and we'll say 5 mono audio tracks. Now, just for the time being, I'm going to set them to no input and no output. The first aux I'm going to call mic. The second one is going to be called the VO aux, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. The first audio track will be VO record. The next will be VO edit, and then we'll have a couple tag tracks for, tonight, next, day of the week, etc. Okay. Now I guess the tag tracks I would leave with no input and no output because those will just serve as placeholders for those edited tracks. Okay, so logically the mic is first, but I think it's appropriate to move the VO record track right below it. Okay, so the mic's input is going to come from the interface, and I have 2 mic pre's set up, and that's just from mic pre 1. But you'll see that there are no buses set up at all. So let's set up a bus or 2. Okay, you'll know that we need somewhere for this mic to go to the record track. So let's set up just an aux for that right now, or a bus for that, I should say. So here we are in our I/O setup, buses, new path, and we just need a mono path, and we'll call it VO record and hit OK. So now you'll see we can bus that to VO record. You can see my voice hitting that beaner, and the VO record track will now have VO record as an input. But even if I can't put this track in input yet because it has no output. So for the purposes of recording this voiceover, we can just have it go to the stereo bus. So now if I throw that in input, you'll see that the mic is now feeding there. So why, you may ask, did I not just put the mic pre-input here? Well, here's the reason. You might need to put a limiter on here so that you don't overload your channel. So I'm going to set that pretty high, -3, and that's fine. You may want to do a little compression. If I have this R compressor set up with a -10 threshold and a ratio of 2.5. That's pretty gentle, but you don't have to have those even engaged. You can just have those bypassed or even inactive. Okay, now they're not taking up any horsepower. So now that we can record our tracks, what would happen next? Well, we'd edit those tracks. So anything I record here, let's say I have a take there and a take there, I would probably just drag them down or copy them there and keep punching away. Okay, but this track, this edit track, is not going to go to the stereo bus like the record track is, because we need that to get some processing. And so the way I like to do that is bus it to the VO aux. So we need to create a bus for the VO aux, and the VO aux is going to need to go somewhere also. And so that's going to be the VO record stem. So let's set up some more buses. New path. We'll call it's one mono path, and we'll call this VO aux. Then set up another mono, which is VO stem. Okay, now we have two more buses. Super simple. Okay, so the VO aux is coming from whatever gets bused there to VO aux, and will be going to the VO stem, which means that our VO edit needs to bus to the VO aux. So now anything that's playing here will go through this aux. So now we can put our processing here. And why would you do that, you might ask? Why not just put that processing here? Well, because Pro Tools only has the inserts pre-fader. So if you do some work here and you've got some volume rides, and then you want to put a post-fader limiter or EQ or some other effect on it, you cannot do that by putting an insert here. You have to bus it somewhere else and put that insert there, because otherwise it won't be post-fader. So this is one way that you can have all of your post-fader inserts, by busing your edited track to an aux. Another reason you might want to do that is because you might have some overlapping voiceover from a couple different channels. Let's say you've got a list of names in a contest spot, and you have to get all of that information there. Well, you may split it across a few tracks. If you bus them both to the VO aux, then it's easy to control the whole volume of it. Okay? So one more track I want to create, and one more bus, is the VO stem bus. So we'll create a new track. It's also a mono audio track. And we're going to create a few buses, actually. So the first bus is the VO stem, which is a mono track. And it's going to be going to the mix. So we'll create another new path, and we'll call this mix bus. Actually, we're going to call it mix submaster. And that's going to be stereo, because we're going to work in stereo on this template. Okay, so now that bus is going to go to the mix submaster. We'll call this VO stem. So we have our voiceover coming into a microphone. We have a limiter and a compressor set up so that we don't overload our record channel. That mic is being bused to the record channel and then just listening through the stereo bus. That gets edited and sent down here to the edit track, which then gets bused to the VO aux. This aux track will potentially have some inserts on it, maybe an EQ, an overall EQ, or a compressor. Okay. So one other thing I want to do before we exit this session and stop talking about voiceover is I want to save some tracks. Okay. So I think it's important to solo save the mic track, the VO aux track, and the VO record. And the reason you want to do that, and actually also the VO stem track. And the reason we want to do that is so that anytime we hit solo, we're not accidentally muting our mic and blowing our recording. We're not accidentally muting our voiceover from going to the VO aux or muting the VO aux from feeding the VO stem. So those are now all solo safed. So anytime you hit solo on another track, those are still open and the signal will still flow one to the other. Actually, just to show you before we leave here how this flows all the way through the VO stem, I'm going to bus this to the stereo output just to show you that. So my mic is feeding there, and I'll do a test recording. This is a test of the emergency broadcasting system. So I stop, I move it to my edit track. You'll see that voiceover exists here. Now, since it's on the edit track, once I play it back, it's going to the aux and then to the stem.